If you've ever struggled with depression before, then you know just how debilitating it can be. Depression is something that I have struggled with in the past. And while I know there's not really a one size fits all solution to managing or even overcoming your depression for good, I wanted to share with you guys a really big piece of the puzzle that really made a huge impact, not just in me finally being able to overcome my depression, but helping me just to cope with the stresses and strains of daily living in general. So, even if you're not depressed, I think this is going to be useful for you. You don't have to be depressed to be able to benefit from the techniques that I'm going to share with you right now. And what I'm talking about here is an evidence-based method of psychotherapy called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. So like I said, it's a great way to help you on your road to overcoming depression, managing depression, and even if you're not depressed, this can be a really useful skill to learn in order to just manage and cope with the stresses and the strains of daily living. So before I get into this, firstly, I want to say, obviously I'm not a doctor, so I don't want this to be construed as actual medical advice. Especially if you are currently dealing with depression, then it really is imperative to seek some help, seek the help of a professional. I think what I'm about to share with you can work really well in combination with seeking out the help of a professional, but I think getting that help first and foremost from somebody that is qualified is really important. And then you can feel free to go ahead and discuss with your therapist what I'm going to talk to you about right now as well. So if you are currently experiencing depression, I have left a couple of links in the description below that are links to various resources within the United States as well as in Canada. So you can go ahead and check that out. So I'll just start off by filling you in on some of my personal background and my own history of depression. So I first started struggling with depression back in high school in my teenage years. And, back then, nobody really talked about depression. I just knew that I didn't feel happy a lot of the time, and I didn't really know why. I just kind of felt like something was wrong with me. But I didn't really have any outlet or anyone to talk to about that. And so it just kind of went on kind of throughout high school and really kind of came to a head in my early 20s. So I think I was about 23 years old, and I just left a really unhealthy relationship. I'd moved back in with my parents, which didn't feel good. And I was stuck in a job that I absolutely couldn't stand. It was an extremely high stress job, and I just woke up with dread every single morning. I didn't want to be there. And I just felt trapped. I felt like there was no way forward. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. My future just seemed empty and desolate. I had no plan. I did not have a post-secondary education at that point. I felt really hopeless. I'd had no self-worth. I felt really hopeless. And I just couldn't see a way forward. I didn't know what I was going to do to turn my life around. I knew that I was not happy as I was, but I didn't know what it is I needed to do. And it was just really weighing me down. I felt trapped. I felt hopeless. And any of you who've ever experienced depression, you can relate to that feeling of hopelessness. And I remember it was Christmas morning. I think it was 2003. And like I said, I had moved back home and I just couldn't get out of bed. And I remember my dad coming into my room and trying to get me to come out and join the family for Christmas. And I just couldn't. I couldn't get out of bed. During that period of my life, it hurt to exist. I would wake up in the morning and just feel like I was in immediate pain and suffering. And it was just a feeling that, you wake up first thing and it's like a crushing weight of just hopelessness and pain, really. So it was about that time that I discovered a book, and I'll show it to you. It's this book right here. It's called Feeling Good, The New Mood Therapy, and this is by Dr. David D. Burns. And I honestly can't remember how I came across this book. I think it may have been a therapist that I was working with at the time. I wasn't going to regular therapy, but I think I may have gone in to see a therapist around that time because of everything that I've just described. I think that's probably how I came across this book. But this book describes the method of psychotherapy called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. And this is the first copy of that book when I got when I got it at like 23 years old. I'm 40 now, so you can see the pages are just falling out. This is a well-worn, well-loved book that I have read through many, many times. And this book really, 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 really was a life changer for me. The techniques in this book got me from feeling hopeless, disempowered, and, in this terrible depression, to feeling like I had some power again. This book helped me to see how I was the one that was in control of the way that I felt. And it's full of all sorts of really fantastic exercises, and I'll share a couple of them with you in a minute. But firstly, let's talk about what exactly CBT is. The main principle behind CBT is this notion of all of the moods that you have, whether they're good moods or bad moods, anger, sadness, any of those things, they all come from the thoughts that we have. So the moment that you have a thought and believe that thought, then there will be an emotional response that follows. It's also been built around this principle that when you are depressed, the majority of the thinking that you're having are negative thoughts. That's why you feel depressed. If you're having nothing but negative thoughts and your thoughts determine how you feel, then all of those negative thoughts are going to bring on negative feelings. And what cognitive behavioral therapy tells us is that a lot of these negative thoughts actually contain distortions in thinking, or cognitive distortions. So what cognitive behavioral therapy does is it trains us to recognize the distortions that we are having in our thinking that create negative thinking patterns that ultimately lead to negative thoughts, which at the extreme can then turn into a depression. And the way that we deal with this is by using some of the techniques that are outlined in this book. Now, this therapy is evidence-based, it's used widely in clinical practices, and it's used to treat depression, it's used to treat bipolar disorder, eating disorders, generalized anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, schizophrenia, psychosis, specific phobias, and various substance abuse disorders. So this is a list of the 10 cognitive distortions which are often at play in our negative thinking patterns, which lead to negative emotions. So number 1, we've got all or nothing thinking. So you see things in black and white categories. If your performance falls short of perfect, you see yourself as a total failure. Number 2 is overgeneralization. So you see a single negative event as a never-ending pattern of defeat. Then we have mental filter. You pick out a single negative detail and dwell on it exclusively so that your vision of all reality becomes darkened like a drop of ink that colors the entire beaker of water. Number 4 is disqualifying the positive. You reject positive experiences by insisting that they don't count for some reason or other. In this way, you can maintain a negative belief that is contradicted by your everyday experiences. Jumping to conclusions. You make a negative interpretation even though there are no definite facts that convincingly support your conclusion. Magnification or minimization. You exaggerate the importance of things, such as your goof up or someone else's achievement, or you inappropriately shrink things until they appear tiny, such as your own desirable qualities or the other person's imperfections. Emotional reasoning. You assume that your negative emotions necessarily reflect the way things really are. So in other words, I feel it, therefore it must be true. Should statements. You try to motivate yourself with shoulds and shouldn'ts as if you had to be whipped and punished before you could be expected to do anything. Labeling and mislabeling. This is an extreme form of overgeneralization. Instead of describing your error, you attach a negative label to yourself, like I'm a loser or I'm a failure. And when someone else's behavior rubs you the wrong way, you attach a negative label to that person. So he is a complete idiot. And then finally, personalization. You see yourself as the cause of some negative external event, which in fact you were not primarily responsible for. So let's go ahead and take a look at a practical example of how we can work through some negative emotions by using a couple of the exercises offered in this book. So the first exercise is called the Daily Record of Dysfunctional Thoughts. So what this is going to do is allow us to take a look at whatever the situation was that sort of triggered this negative emotional response. And it's going to train us to recognize the automatic thoughts that we're having about whatever that situation was and pick out the cognitive distortion that is at play. And then we're going to talk back to that thought using a more realistic evaluation of the situation. So I'm going to give you a real life example of something that happened to me very recently. The situation was I received an extremely rude email from someone that was having trouble signing up for a free webinar that I was putting on. So this was a couple of months ago. Now, the emotions that I felt were anger, which was at 99%. I was very angry after I read the email. And I also felt indignant. And I would have put that at about 99% as well. And my automatic thoughts were, firstly, okay, I offer this free webinar and this is how I get treated. And then another thought I had was, who the hell does this person think they are? And, honestly, I thought, what a total bitch. Those are the thoughts that I had. So let's take a look at the cognitive distortions at play here. That first thought, which was, I offer a free webinar and this is how I get treated. The cognitive distortion here is overgeneralization. And the rational response to this is, I had over 1,000 registrants for my webinar and only one person treated me badly. So why let one person's negative response ruin my day? Now for the second sentence, who the hell does she think she is? What a total you-know-what. This is labeling. And the rational response here is, I don't know anything about this person or what other frustrations she was currently dealing with that day. Maybe she was already having a really bad day and her difficulty with my webinar registration process, maybe that was the straw that broke the camel's back for this person. And, rather than seethe with anger, I can actually extend some compassion toward her because I don't know what else she's been going through. And I can also use her feedback to see if there's any way that I can streamline the registration process so that it's easier for everyone. So when I go down to the outcome here, with that first automatic thought, I went from angry at 99%, and that dropped down to about 20%. And then the feeling of being indignant, that went from 99% to about 10%. So right there, I can actually see this working. I can see how much relief I experienced just by doing this simple exercise. And while the anger still wasn't completely eradicated, that's basically an 80% improvement. So I was able to go about the rest of my day, and even though I still found it irritating, it wasn't the seething anger that I had been experiencing for the rest of the day up until that point. So it was a huge, huge improvement. So the second really useful exercise in this book, this is called the triple column technique, and it's basically just a pared down version of the daily record of dysfunctional thoughts. What you're just going to write down is the specific thought you had, the cognitive distortion that's at play, and then you're going to replace that thought with its more rational and realistic response. So let's go ahead and look at a couple more examples here. All right, so let's take a look at a self-critical automatic thought. So any of you that's in my course, you might recognize this because I sent it out in one of my emails, but here it goes. It is, why can't I figure this out? I am never going to get the hang of this. So that's your automatic thought. The cognitive distortion that is at play here is jumping to conclusions. And then the rational response is, I may not have figured this out yet, but if I keep asking questions and practicing what I'm learning, there's no reason why I can't eventually figure this out. So you can see that first automatic thought, it's very disempowering. And by saying I'm never going to get the hang of this, you're cutting off all possibilities of ever getting the hang of it. And you're going to feel really demotivated and deflated. But the rational response here, it's a lot more realistic, and it leaves you feeling empowered instead of disempowered, and more likely to stay motivated and actually figure out whatever it is that you're trying to work through and get to that end goal. All right, second example here, automatic thought. Everyone else is making much quicker progress than I am. I will always be lagging behind. So cognitive distortions at play here. We've got jumping to conclusions again. We've got disqualifying the positive here as well. So with disqualifying the positive, in this situation, you are disqualifying the positive by not really giving yourself credit for any of the strides or any of the progress that you've already made. Other people might be making much quicker progress, but you are still making progress, and you need to recognize, however small that progress is, you're making it. But by disqualifying the positive, you're basically telling yourself that any progress that you have made doesn't count because you're not making it as quickly as someone else. So what is the rational response here? The rational response could be something along the lines of, some are further along than me in their progress, but I'm further along than some others. Why does it matter if someone succeeds before I do? It's not a race where only one person wins. Personal progress is what counts. It has nothing to do with where anyone else is in their own journey. So again, the first sentence here, it's very disempowering and demotivating, whereas that rational response flips it around. It's more of an accurate statement, and it's going to leave you feeling empowered and motivated. Now, the final automatic thought here, I didn't sell a single copy of my first 5 books. I suck. So the cognitive distortions at play, we've got some all or nothing thinking. So remember, all or nothing thinking is when you see things totally in black and white. If your performance falls short of perfect, then you consider yourself a total failure. So this is a good example of all or nothing thinking. And then you've also got some magnification here. And then by saying I suck, you are also labeling. So a more rational response here is, so what? This just means I have some more learning to do. There's no reason why I can't spend some time figuring out what went wrong and then improving my efforts next time around. So once you get accustomed to using either the daily record of dysfunctional thoughts or the triple column technique, you'll finally be able to get to a point where you can pare that down even further and just have 2 columns. So now whenever I do this exercise, I just write down my automatic thought and then I write down the more realistic and rational response beside it. And it really only takes a few minutes. And this is a tool that I still use to this day, 15 years later. And I'm happy to say that the tools in this book, in combination with some antidepressant medication, really helped me to eradicate my depression. And I haven't been on antidepressant medication for the last 10 years, but I'm definitely still using the tools and exercises in this book. Anytime I start to feel that ugliness of depression starting to descend on me, and it does still happen, I pull out this book, I start using these tools again, and it keeps those things at bay. And like I said, I have not had another bout of clinical depression since I was stuck in that terrible place in my early 20s. So that is how effective this is. So it's not just for when you're feeling depressed either. I still use these tools quite frequently. If I'm just feeling really negative or I've been in a bad mood for longer than a few hours, like if I wake up in the morning and I've just got kind of a heaviness around me, this is what I do. I use these techniques, the pared down version, where I'm just writing down what those automatic negative thoughts are, and then I talk back to them and I provide the rational response. And that usually gives me an immediate lift in my mood, and then I can go about my day. So I did talk about this a little bit in my morning routine video, which you can check out right here. And I mentioned that this is a part of my morning routine. I don't use it all the time, but like I said, if I wake up and I'm just feeling a little bit negative, I've got some negative energy or something's kind of bothering me and creating a bad mood or any sort of negativity, then I use these techniques and it really helps to lift my spirits for the rest of the day. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you found that useful, and I hope you're going to be able to find a way to incorporate these tools into your life, whether you are dealing with a depression or even if you're just looking for some coping strategies to help you deal with the regular stresses and strains of daily living. That's what I use these tools for predominantly now, and they really will work wonders in helping you to work through those negative emotions quickly so that you can just get past them and get on with your day. And remember, if you are currently experiencing a depression, please go and get help. Like I said, I've left a couple of links to resources below. You don't have to do it alone. There is help, so please never be afraid to go out there and seek out the help of a professional. Check out these videos next for more mindset-related content. And if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Thanks for watching.